photograph from the scene of Donald Trump's inauguration following his win in the US 2016 presidential elections. In an NBC interview soon after the inauguration, Trump's advisor Kellyanne Conway defended the White House press secretary Sean Spicer's claim that Mr. Trump had attracted the largest audience ever to witness an inauguration. When told that that wasn't quite true, she replied airily, "Don't be so dramatic," he gave alternative facts. Ooh. Almost immediately after Conway's interview, George Orwell's classic novel 1984 spiked to #1 on Amazon. The Twitter sphere responded to this with allusions to the particular quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." So all those of you who read 1984 realize this. After the sales for the novel shot up by 9,500%, Penguin announced for special plans for a 75,000 copy reprint of Orwell's book. What is it about such works of fiction that resonate with people in a way that hard facts don't? How can something written in 1949 be so relevant today? Given the events happening in the US and the widespread anxieties around fake news, post-truth, and political disenfranchisement, people were looking for fables and stories to make sense of and navigate this strange new landscape. Unlike abstract analysis, stories like 1984 are so powerful because they are harmonious with the way we relate to the world. They resonate deeply with our core experiences, because even at the level of direct engagement, the way we understand and experience the world is through stories, is through narrative constructions. What we call reality is more like a narrative masterpiece than anything objective. And I think deep down we know this. In fact, you've heard of all the stories and how they are constructed through the day. We rationally understand just how subjective our sense of the world is, but practically forget as we go about our everyday lives. From the way we perceive our day unfolding to our politics and history, it's stories all the way down. That said, we need to make the distinction between allegory and deception, between the stories that seek to blind us and those that enable us to navigate our world. So if stories are the structure of our world, then emotions are the primary motivating force in our lives. This is not to say that data and modeling and analytics are not important. Rational thinking is deeply important, and the power of that is evident in myriad ways around us. But what is also evident is the fallacy that what moves us to act as individuals is deep scientific rationality. We are not cold rational actors in a Newtonian universe as much as we like to believe. It's just not how we live, it's just not how we are used to live, it's not how we've evolved to live. We are emotional beings living in a world of mythology and stories. Antonio Damasio challenged Descartes' logical fallacy. "I think, therefore I am." In his groundbreaking work, Descartes' Error, Emotion, Reason, and the Human Brain. Damasio argues that Descartes' error comes from the dualist separation of the mind and the body, rationality and emotion. Damasio wrote that emotions and feelings are not a luxury. They are means of communicating our states of mind to others. But they are also a way of guiding our own judgments and decisions. Emotions bring the body into the loop of reason. Now, more than ever, it is essential that we acknowledge and build on our embodiment. Today, we are in a period of accelerating change and dizzying potential, which Kate mentioned, from both huge transformation and catastrophic failure. No wonder many of us experience feelings of overwhelm from the increasing speed and volume of information we are exposed to. The rate of change in the world around us is disorienting. Currently, the main way we analyze and talk about these complex changes is through vast clouds of data points. And although data can look scary, it's somehow disembodied, detached from what it references. Despite the alarming warnings around climate change, it is evident that we are having trouble acting upon this disembodied data. And data, especially about the future, feels even more disembodied and distant. fMRI studies suggest that when you imagine your future self, your brain does something really weird. It stops acting as if you are thinking about yourself. Instead, it operates as if you're thinking about a completely different person. This is what behavioral economists call temporal distancing. Our tendency is to want things now rather than later. Studies by Kim and Zauberman suggest that the extent to which one discounts a future event is closely linked to how far away in the future it is. It's that temporal distance from the present. So, perhaps if people were able to pre-experience the future, or if it were possible to create mental simulations of the future, that could trigger episodic memory, reducing the temporal distance to the future. Episodic memory is that part of our memory that helps us remember key events of the past. Neuroscientists call it the prospective brain, whose primary function is to use past experiences to anticipate future events. And this is what me and my partner, John Arden, do in our studio, Superflux, in London, with a team of great colleagues. Our work focuses on using the power of embodied stories and visceral experiences to simulate different possible futures, and bringing them into the present, into the here and the now, in order to catalyze an embodied engagement with the vast potential of the future. So how do we do this? It all starts with what we call sense-making, a wide-ranging process of analyzing data, watching trends, scanning ethnographic and anthropological data, following intuitive hunches, exposing ourselves constantly to new ideas and getting a sense of their emotional content, and reflecting on our own emotional responses. All of this to find what we call weak signals, those bits of the future that arrive early into the buzzing noise of the now, finding threads of possibility in the complex chaos, and then drawing out those threads to see where they connect in order to explore rich tapestries of what lies ahead. And that's where the real work starts, embodying the future potential into the present. But rather than kind of explain it, a bit of theory and context, I'm going to take you through a few of our projects to give you a sense of what this looks like. A project we did a few years ago called Drone Avery is prescient even today. For the project, we wanted to explore the power, the growing power of invisible and increasingly autonomous technologies like the drones. Because the drone has a dual function, a technology that has the potential for good, but also great harm. Our interest was specifically on how the presence of these machines will change our lived experience of the urban space. What does it mean to interact with algorithmic intelligence? Because drones have the power to see things we can't, to go places we can't, and to do so with increasing autonomy. And so, to understand the technology, we started building a lot of drones in our studio. We gave them names, functions, and then flew them, but not without difficulty. Things came loose, GPS signals glitched, and drones crashed. But it was through such experimentation that we constructed a very concrete, very experiential slice of one possible future. So let's go to that future now. Let's imagine we are living in a city with drones like this one. It patrols the street, often spotted in evenings and at nights. Initially, many of us were annoyed by its low, dull hum. But then, like everything else, we got used to it. We call it the Night Watchman. Now, what if we could see the world through its eyes? See how it constantly logs every resident of the neighborhood. Logging the kids who play football in the no ball game area and marking them as statutory nuisances. And then see how it disperses this other group who are teenagers with the threat of an autonomously issued injunction. Another drone is a route hawk, an autonomous traffic management agent. At first glance, a seemingly harmless machine with a bright LED display providing dynamic warnings to drivers. But then they multiply, they're everywhere, constantly logging traffic violations, enforcing penalties, continually searching and capturing the smallest offense. a tireless flock of automated revenue generation machines. And then there's the newsbreaker, the media drone which feeds our growing hunger for the very latest breaking news as they happen, constantly monitoring emergency services and social media in real time. These nimble media devices push the boundaries for what has become known as high-frequency journalism. Perched across the city, they whir into action as soon as a news story breaks, filming and streaming it in real time. Story writing algorithms pass imagery, audio, web, and radio traffic into rapidly growing and continually edited column inches. And then there's this giant floating disk called Madison. Its glaring presence is so overwhelming, I can't help but stare at it. But it feels like each time I look at it, it knows a little more about me. Like it keeps flashing all these Brian Air adverts at me, as if it knows about the holiday I'm planning. I'm not sure if I find this mildly entertaining or just entirely invasive. Whilst building drones like the Madison and Night Watchman in these particular forms, which are not real yet, most elements of the drone future that we build are not fictional but are very real today. For example, facial recognition systems are everywhere. In our phones, in the smart gadgets, in the cities around us, constantly keeping a record of everything we do, whether it's an advertisement we glance at or a protest we attend. These things are here, and we do not understand what their consequences could be. We have engaged with numerous diverse audiences through the drones and the film, making such work a critical tool for public engagement. The drones have been on tour for the last 4 years and will continue to do so for 3 more years, moving across countries and locations, screenings and debates, catalyzing the imagination of thousands of unknown viewers, and hopefully nourishing an appetite for questioning the power of technologies and speculating on their near future potential. And we see these technologies everywhere. This is the Google's little tiny camera, so small, and it's constantly taking pictures of what you think you might want to photograph but never got a chance to do. So these technologies in different forms are all around us. You might find them invasive or exciting or what have you. All the way to this AI patrol borders as you walk through the Dubai airport, immersing yourself admiring the virtual fish across the walls while your face is being detected and cross-referenced by an AI for your comfort and security. You will no longer have to wait in line at security counters or pass through an e-gate, just walk through the tunnel. So we look at things like these, this Internet of Things, this connected world of technology and how far it can go and things it can do. It seems like we have to keep feeding them data, but yes. So we were not just at the level of drones, but in a very urban, mundane, everyday life. What is the implication of living with such smart technology? And so we created another small fiction, but this time around something much more relatable. This is around having smart devices in your home. Now, one big use case for smart devices, healthcare, and specifically monitoring people who are not living near us, and remote tracking, especially of elderly people. So we wanted to challenge this idea that one size fits all, that we can build technology and we can give it to elderly people and we can monitor them remotely, and that's what they want us to do as well. Basically, we don't have time to visit them, so we do that. Anyway, so this is the story of Thomas. Thomas is an elderly man. He lives on his own. He has 3 adult children who live far away from him. They don't have time to visit their dad, but want to make sure that he's all right. So they send him these smart devices, like a smart fork that is used to monitor that he eats healthy, a smart cane that makes sure he exercises well, and a smart mattress that makes sure he gets enough sleep. Now, Thomas found these devices really annoying. They were interfering with his everyday life and his rituals, so he stopped using them. But because he stopped using them, the children didn't get any data about how the father was doing. And so they started nudging him with text messages constantly. Come on, Dad, start using them. And so he finds ways to outsmart his smart devices. And I'll just show you a clip of that.
Cow in sea area Shannon moving slowly eastwards and filling. Sorry, that should be low in sea area Shannon. And now the area reports. Viking, northward Sierra, southward Sierra, rain at times, good. Westerly becoming cyclonic, good. Humber, Thames, Bedford, Leyland, Daff, Dover, Seoul, Haight, rain at times, good. White, Portland, Plymouth.
Now, subway systems from around the world. Will you either tell us in which city systems, please? Best of luck. Okay, let's reveal our 5 subway systems, and here they come. We have got that made you think Paris. New York City from Andy and Juliet. 50. David and Rachel are going to say, is it going to be 15 though? They don't do that. 7. Very well done indeed. That's the way this is so many films and what have you, isn't it? Now A is London.
Shink of light getting inside the telescope. The astronauts had to get the latch to lock.
If you copy, Jeff's just working, putting the doors back together and thinks he seems to close the gap. And we're going to press on. If you've got a way to do it, do it.
Trap and a ratchet. Floating Story Musgrave improvised a solution. It was a success. The astronauts were elated.
Yeah, so this is something that we think about a lot, and we talk to designers and technologists, this idea that we often overlook these problematic aspects of technology because we tend to imbue technology with the ideals of the people who have created it and the messages of those who market it. Not everybody is jogging along the east coast of America with their earplugs tucked on with their iPhone. That message that is marketed is not how the technology is used. Creators and marketeers can only ever set the affordances or suggest a use case, but the technology's true impact will always be defined by those who use it. Whether that's knitting groups or fascist regimes, technology becomes an amplifier and an accelerator of the social, cultural, and political values of the groups who use it, not those who make it. And it'll continue to be used in ways we can never imagine. And we have to, as designers, technologists, marketeers, creators, be aware of how we understand these use cases before we kind of go about creating stuff. The other big thing that was talked earlier today was about voice AI. And this is also something that we explored with a similar lens. The idea that currently we have voice AI devices that are very kind of linear. It's a command and control thing. Alexa, tell me the weather. Alexa, what time it is. So we work with Mozilla Foundation to explore alternate forms of voice assistance. Like, what does it mean to have, if machines had different dimensions, if machines had different interactions and different personalities? How much control do we have over these interactions? What does it mean to trust a machine that takes actions on our behalf? How can we judge that they will be completed with competence and tact? And so I'm going to take, these were 3 devices that we created. These are 3 kind of prototype voice assistants that we designed. And they had very different kind of personalities and functions. And I'm going to show you a couple of the videos. There's the one on the red and the white one basically recites Marxist chants. So this is a story of SIG that you could hack and make your own.
Sick. What's the weather forecast like for tomorrow?
It looks like thick cloud overcast with a heavy rain shower, although you should be at work before then.
Oh, I don't want to go to work tomorrow.
Why would you? Work is a form of wage slavery. You'd be much happier without it.
Yeah, I know, but I'd still have to pay the rent.
Not if all housing were free. If people were to unionize.
Well, I'd love that, but it seems very unlikely.
So did restoring unfair deductions and organising a phosphorus-free meal room for the female workers at Bryant and May, but that was achieved through unionisation.
Fair point, but establishing a system of free housing seems a bit more complex than negotiating pay in lunchrooms.
If work were an absolute necessity, it could be justified by an increase in your salary.
Well, yeah, but our boss has made it pretty clear that none of us are due a pay rise this year. Not enough money, apparently.
Capital is money. Capital is commodities. In truth, however, value is here the active factor in a process. It brings forth living offspring, or at least lays golden eggs.
I knew it. It's horseshit. It's a massive pile of horseshit.
1 ton?
Sounds about right.
Okay, ordering 1 ton of horse manure.
What?
Organic horse manure, perfect for roses. Order complete. You can expect your delivery in 2 to 3 days.
And so the idea that at what point do we keep trusting machines and where does the trust break? Another kind of voice assistant is the one which actually, funnily enough, a year later Google built, is a voice device that takes on your identity and starts acting on your behalf.
Tell us a joke, Karma.
Why did the robot cross the road? Because he was programmed to do it.
Oh, tell us another, Karma.
Let me try this.
A friend of mine always wanted to be run over by a steam train. When it finally happened, he was chuffed to bits.
Wow, this is nuts. This machine can use the personal information you give it to effectively adopt your identity. According to this, all the information is stored safely and remains protected, and it only shares when you say so.
Oh, Leanne, did you call Lightspark about the refund? I tried. I was on hold for hours and got nowhere. Okay, Karma, make a call to Lightspark. For this call, use my identity and demand our energy bill refund.
Of course. Please provide your authorization phrase to make the call.
You can off.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Lightspark. Just to let you know, this call is being recorded for quality control and training purposes. May I confirm that I am speaking to the account holder? Can I ask for your account reference number, please?
Yes, I am the account holder. My account reference number is 90546132277. I'm calling to ask for the refund due on my account, please.
Yes, it will take 6 weeks to process.
But we've been waiting for over 6 months already.
Yes, we understand, ma'am, but I'm afraid that the process takes a designated time of 6 weeks to complete upon receipt of your official refund form.
I'm losing my patience with this. I've already sent the form. Give me my money back.
Yes, ma'am. Please do understand that this is in accordance with company policy. We need to do this due to...
I don't care about your company policy. All I want to hear from you is there's no problem and you can expect your refund promptly.
It will take 6 more weeks for investigation and processing before issuing your refund. We really appreciate your custom.
Go to I'm not paying any more till I get my money back. Oh,
yes, ma'am. Please do understand that this is in accordance with company policy.
So yeah, that was the battle of two AIs, which some people got and some didn't, but the idea that the energy company also had an AI which is trying to respond to this, and what starts happening, and this is not something that is fiction. Turns out that organizations and tech companies are very consciously designing AI that can take on different forms of your identity. What world will we find ourselves in when these kind of personal AIs start taking on bits of our identity? First glimpse from Google was Duplex.
The progress with the assistant. As I said earlier, our vision for our assistant is to help you get things done. It turns out a big part of getting things done is making a phone call. You may want to get an oil change schedule, maybe call a plumber in the middle of the week, or even schedule a haircut appointment. You know, we are working hard to help users through those moments. We want to connect users to businesses in a good way. Businesses actually rely a lot on this, but even in the US, 60% of small businesses don't have an online booking system set up. We think AI can help with this problem. So let's go back to this example. Let's say you want to ask Google to make you a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Mm-hmm. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have at 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah. So yeah, this is an interesting slope. Uphill or downhill, I don't know, but we are on it. And I think we really need to actively, as technologists, understand what we are building and what those unintended consequences could be. So this is some of the work I showed you around public engagement, which is critical. But we also think this idea of bringing the future into the present is important for policy decisions. When you make policy changes, you're not just affecting a graph or numbers on a graph. Those numbers mean something very real. So I'd like to share your project we did with the government of United Arab Emirates, who invited us to help them shape their energy strategy all the way up to 2050. Based on the government's econometric data, we created this large city model and visualized many possible sustainable futures on it. As I was taking the Prime Minister and ministers of the cabinet and energy companies through one possible sustainable future on this model, one of the Prime Ministers told me basically that I cannot imagine that people in the future will stop driving cars and use public transport instead. This is Dubai and they love their cars. And then he said, there's no way I can tell my own son to not use his car. But we were prepared for this reaction. Working with scientists in a chemistry lab in my hometown in Ahmedabad in India, we had created approximate samples of what the air will be like in 2030 if our behavior stays the same. And so I basically walked those group of people over to this object that emits vapor from those air samples. Just one whiff of the noxious polluted air from 2030 brought home the point that no amount of data can. This is not the future you will allow your children to inherit. A few days later, the government made a big announcement. They would be investing billions of dollars in renewables. We don't know exactly what part our future experiences played in this decision, but we know that they've changed their energy policy to mitigate such a scenario. And so this is something that we are learning a lot. We are learning that one of the most powerful means of affecting change is when people can directly, tangibly, and emotionally experience the future consequences of their actions today. And that becomes increasingly important. A couple of times climate change has been mentioned today, but as we know, things are going to get a lot more complex. Looking at data and projections like this, it is hard to imagine the unsurmountable amount of problems we are likely to face. I have found that people in their everyday lives are unable to make sense of how this graph will affect them, their families, and their children. Timothy Morton, a scholar and who works with climate change, says, we have built computing systems that model climate change in real time. But our common sense perception can't compute the terabytes of global climate information or sense the nanosecond timescales, most mornings I can't even find my coffee grinder. For something quite as complex as climate change, Morton coined the term hyperobject. According to him, we have created things that we can hardly understand, let alone control, let alone make sensible political decisions about. A new word to understand how mind-blowing it is hyperobjects. Hyperobjects are phenomena like radioactive materials and global warming. Hyperobjects stretch our ideas of time and space, since they far outlast most human timescales, or they are so massively distributed in terrestrial space that we are unable to make them available to our own immediate experiences. And so at Superflux, we wanted to condense the vast amorphous form of climate change into a hyperobject that is more recognizable and tangible to understand. So one of the things we zoomed into around climate change was its implication on global trade and food. Climate data projections suggest that by 2050, per capita food consumption will rise from 32 kilos today to 52 kilos, along with increased volatility in price and production. On the other hand, heavy rainfall events might continue to lead to flooding, destroying crops, as well as devastating food stores, assets, and agricultural land. As a result, most consumers are unlikely to be able to purchase adequate foodstuffs. Based on such projections, we explored one possible future where the Western world has moved from abundance to scarcity. We imagined living in a city with repeated flooding, periods with almost no food in supermarkets, economic instabilities, broken supply chains. What can we do to not just survive, but prosper in such a world? What food can we eat? To really get inside these questions, we did a ton of live prototyping. We explored the possibility of transforming our homes into spaces of food production, gaining hands-on knowledge around new and emerging ways of growing food using nice, accessible, cheap technology. So we started building food computers from scratch, using the technique of fogponics. So just fog, no water or soil, to grow things quickly. And we did this using abandoned, salvaged, and repurposed materials, turning today's waste into tomorrow's dinner. This is a glimpse of our apartment, early experiments with my partner John and our son Arlo, who's also here. He's 6. And now I'll take you to the final outcome of the work, which took the form of an installation set around 2050 or so inside an apartment, when our 6-year-old son might be around my age today. At first glance, a seemingly comfortable living space designed for a world of global trade, material abundance, but then, on closer inspection, a realization that the apartment has been modified and adapted to a world it was never meant to inhabit. Discarded newspapers and a radio show reflect the tensions of this new world. A smart panel constantly asking the fridge to refill milk, but where is the milk in this future? Amongst the detritus of now obsolete smart devices and designer goods lives a new reality transformed by the impact of climate change. Alongside books like Pets is Protein and How to Grow and Live in Scarcity are recipes that reflect the change in food production, consumption, and storage. Experimental food production now occupies space once given to relaxation, transforming the apartment into a space for growing and producing food. Resourcefully hacked together consumer items, IKEA shelves, decorative fog makers, programmable microcontrollers, plumbing supplies, and LED lamps. Fog oozing out of these contraptions, blinding purple light, the droning sounds of water pipes, snares, foxskin, algae, mycelium, all bearing fruit in the blasted ruins of capitalism. Looking beyond, there lies a city familiar, yet alien. This project was on for 4 months at the Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona and had 150,000 visitors through it. But this is not a prediction, nor is it a computer render. The intention of such a speculative approach with hands-on experimentation is that it gives us a chance to enter a familiar space, to confront our fears, not to scare or overwhelm, but help people critically reflect upon our actions today and introduce them to potential adaptations for living in such a future. The evidence in this apartment might reflect a different future than we understand today, but all the food computers were in fully working condition. No speculation there. Whilst many saw this as an early warning, we wanted to empower people by demonstrating that we have the potential today to change and meet the future full-on, head-on. What this goes to show is that we have the methods and the techniques so we can use to prepare and design a preferable future, because it is better to be surprised by simulation than blindsided by reality, as my friends Jake Dunnigan and Stuart Candy say. We've started putting all the recipes of our food computers on Instructables for anyone who wants to start prototyping and building these themselves. I want to conclude by saying that we are at a pivotal point in history where we have everything to play for and everything to lose. In times like this, there's a tendency to look towards existing knowledge for answers, to rely exclusively on the rational and the scientific for solutions. But increasingly, it has become evident that this is just not driving the wide-scale behavioral change needed to effectively navigate this critical point in our history. I believe that finding ways to directly and viscerally experience different possible future directions is a very important part of the solution for dealing with our current crises. We need to bring the future close enough to feel. We need to engage both the intellect and the emotion to harness the power of our innate embodied intelligence. We need to make informed, thoughtful, and nuanced long-term decisions, and most importantly, to act not just for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren and the world they will inherit, so that we can become proud ancestors for the generations to come. I leave you in the hope that together we can find the necessary tools to transform our greatest challenges into our greatest triumphs, that we can be remembered as the generation that looked the future square into the eyes and acted upon what it saw. So think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Thank you.